Dear kind and merciful Father, we thank you for the opportunity to come before you once again. Open our hearts and our mind that we may comprehend that which you have in store for us. Give us wisdom, knowledge, and understanding from on high. In Jesus' holy name we pray. Let everyone say, Amen. Now, saints, let me ask a question. How many of you guys were blessed by the information last night? Unfortunately, when I went back to actually play it back, I realized that we had a little issue here and there. So what I'm going to do, probably about early tomorrow morning, I'm going to re-record it with the same exact testimonies. So in that way, Sister Nash and myself can get that reposted for you guys. So just to kind of give you some heads up, we want to make sure that I have all the testimonies. I just got to write the testimonies out a little just to make sure I have the right testimonies at the right time to put that in the re-recording, so in that way you guys can have it. But what we decided to do is still post it, that as long as some of you guys are like patient, you can actually just kind of just make it through it in the meanwhile and at least get something from it. Okay, so we did put it up, but once we post the new one, we will discard the first one that I did. As you know, our topic of discussion is diabetes, and this is part 2 of the lecture. Last night I gave the example of the factors that plays a role with type 1 diabetes. Well, now what we're going to do, we're going to go exactly or directly into the causes of diabetes type 1.5. You'll also find that these also play a role in diabetes type 1 also. So when you're dealing with type 1 or 1.5, you may have things like damage to the pancreas. It could be drug-induced. It could be a viral infection, vitamin D deficiency, iodine deficiency, gluten sensitivity, along with other lifestyle factors. And this is when you're dealing with both type 1 and type 1.5. As a matter of fact, type 1.5, another name for it is LADA, latent autoimmune diabetes in adult. This falls more in the category of an autoimmune disease, similar to that of like lupus and MS and arthritis and things along that line. When you look at diabetes as a whole, about 80% of diabetics are going to be type 2. Of the 80%, 20%, no, let's see if I get that right. No, let's back up. Yeah, that's correct. That's correct, because you have the room there for the type 1 as well as the other variants also. So about 80% of all diabetics are going to be type 2. However, here is what the research is now showing. Within that 80%, 20% of the 80 is actually type 1.5. And that's where someone have both type 1 and type 2 at the same time. They have 2 types of diabetes at the same time. So as a result, the treatment that you would actually use in this situation would be a dual treatment to address both type 1 and type 2. I can tell you, as I've traveled all over the world, the area that I have found to have the greatest amount of type 1.5 was actually St. Lucia. You know, you would be amazed to know that such a small little Caribbean island would have such big or vast amount of this specific diabetes, the 1.5, which is the double diabetes. I also found that not only did St. Lucia have the highest incidence of type 1.5, but they were also ranked as being the most diabetic, or have the highest level of diabetes in the world, the people in St. Lucia. So St. Lucia is, they're the top in terms of a country that has the highest amount of diabetes recorded out there per, if you're going to go per, if you go percentage-wise, just to kind of give you some heads up. So 1.5, another name for that, as I've mentioned before, is LADA, latent autoimmune diabetes in adult. It's a form of autoimmune diabetes. Alternate terms have been, some people would say double diabetes, double whammy. These are the different names that they have applied to it. Just to kind of give you some basic things on it, if you're kind of wondering, some basic characteristics on LADA, it normally occurs after the age of 30. Okay, so with type 1 is normally 20 and beyond, 20 and below, that these individuals will be diagnosed with some level of diabetes. And this is the type 1 juvenile onset. So 20 and below, they're called type 1 or juvenile onset. When the diabetes tends to occur in adulthood, where it's 30 and above, they tend to refer to that now as more a 1.5, but not because it occurs later in life, but it occurs and it has certain characteristics that goes along with it. And let me give you an example. Normally, when you're treating type 1, you cannot treat them with oral medication like metformin and things like that. You actually have to treat them specifically with insulin. However, with the 1.5, that is not necessarily that way. With the 1.5, they can be treated with both either insulin or oral medication. But what happens is that within a 7-year period, they go from oral medication to insulin and totally dependent on insulin within 7 years or earlier. Okay? However, one of the things you'll find is that whenever you correct the issue that needs to be addressed with a 1.5, many times you can completely reverse that where individuals no longer need any form of insulin. I can tell you that every 1.5 that I have worked with to date, all of them have been able to get off of all of their medication, and I cannot recall of any of them having to use insulin, after we put them on the program. So just to give you some heads up, with the 1.5, even though it's a double whammy, it's the double diabetes, it's someone having both type 1 and type 2 all at the same time, when the proper treatment is applied, we get 100% reversal without any issue at all, just to kind of give you some heads up. Now, what are other characteristics that you can actually look at? These individuals tend to have a slender physique. Now, think about it. Normally, when you're talking about diabetes and you categorize someone as a diabetic type 2, they tend to have a more fuller figure. But to find a diabetic type 2 that is a more slender stature, that looks like a type 1, but is considered a type 2, you know that there's something wrong. I can tell you that many times when physicians have diagnosed these individuals, it has baffled them. And the reason behind that, they know that it looks like 1, but acts like 2. So the question is, what is it, or what exactly are we dealing with? The answer is that we're dealing with LADA. It's an autoimmune response that is going on. Okay, so just to kind of give you some heads up, put that in perspective, they're unlikely to have any form of family history with type 2 diabetes. They tend to have positive antibodies. So just to kind of put a few of those things in perspective for you. What exactly is type 2 diabetes? And this is the area that we're going to be doing our focus on this evening, okay? So just to give you some heads up, this is where our focus will primarily be. What exactly is type 2 diabetes? Diabetes occurs when the body becomes unable to handle glucose or sugar, which builds up to dangerous level in the blood. A diagnosis of diabetes is usually made when the blood sugar test is consistently above 126 milligrams per deciliter or 7.0 millimoles per liter. Now, saints, as I'm here talking to you, I want to give you a testimony of a 1.5. As a matter of fact, if you want, I can give you probably a few testimonies while I'm on the topic. I'll start with this one. This one specifically occurred in Jamaica. I remember a few years ago, I went to Jamaica, and I was in the Portmore area, and I met this gentleman, and he and I began talking, and he says, James, just to give you some heads up, I am a medical missionary. I said, praise the Lord, because I am one also. He said, I went to one of the medical missionary school in the U.S., and I was trained there, and as I listened to him, I says, okay, that's the sister school to the school that I trained at. And he says, I even went through the lifestyle program while I was there. I said, okay, and you come out from that institution with diabetes still? He says, yeah, I still have it. So I says, okay, let's talk. Well, I can tell you this, saints. I looked at the gentleman. Gentleman is a very tall, slender individual. And I says, okay, you don't mind me asking you, what type of diabetic are you, or which one of the diabetes do you have? He says, I'm a type 2. I said, no, you're not. He says, what do you mean? I said, you're a 1.5. You have an autoimmune condition. I said, let's talk a little, and I'll find out what's going on. I said to him, how old are you, by the way? He says, well, I'm old enough to be retired, because he had just retired from the government there in Jamaica. And I said to him, what type of work did he used to do? And he shared with me that he worked in an office, and he had worked in an office for years. And as we began talking, he went ahead and mentioned to me that there was a pain, like in his back, somewhat close to the kidneys, that he had when he went to the medical missionary training school, and I think he spent maybe about 2 years there. And when he came back, the same pain was still there. The pain never left. I says, okay. I said, I think I know the cause of your pain. He says, really? I said, based on what you have shared with me thus far, and we had kind of talked for a little while, I said, it sounds like you are vitamin D deficient. And it's very likely that vitamin D deficiency is very likely the cause of your autoimmune response with the diabetes type 1.5. He looked at me and says, okay. I said, well, tell you what I recommend that you get a vitamin D supplement. And I told him the exact portion to take. And he decided to go out, get the vitamin D. He took the exact portion I told him. Within 2 days, all the pain in his back was gone. That pain that he suffered with for so long was completely gone. What's amazing was that that the pain was completely gone. And the reason is because this was something that he was dealing with for years. Okay. Saints, it seems like I had a little interruption there. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go ahead and close this down, and I'm going to start over. Okay, so permit me. Let's see. Okay, screen is gone, so forth. I'm just going to go ahead and start it over, so just hang in there with me as I prepare to start over. Okay. Dear kind and merciful Father, we thank you so much for the opportunity to come before you once again. We ask that you be with us as we prepare to share with your children that which you have bestowed upon us. Open our hearts and our mind that we may understand that which you want us to hear this evening. In Jesus' holy name we pray. Amen. I just want to say welcome, welcome, welcome. Saints, this topic that I'm sharing with you this evening is by far my favorite topic of all topics that's out there to actually share. I can tell you that, as you would have learned in part 1, and this is part 2, if I were to wish a disease upon mankind, it would be that of diabetes type 2. And the reason being is because it's the easiest disease to reverse. And I'm a big believer, if you're going to give me a disease to deal with, give me the easy. If you give me the easy, you sit back and watch the glory of God. Amen? So this is part 2. We're going to continue where we left off. And we left off with type 1. We completed type 1. We kind of just give like a little snippet on it. Now we're going to give you a little snippet on type 1.5 and then go into the bulk of our lecture this evening. Okay, so our focal point of our lecture will be on type 2. Okay, that's going to be the focal point of our lecture this evening. Type 2 is going to be the focal point, and I would just go into just like, a little snippet of the type 1.5. Now, here are the basic principles when dealing with 1.5. Now, roughly about 80% of all diabetics are type 2. About 80% of all diabetics are type 2. Within the 80%, 20% of the type 2 diabetics are actually called 1.5. And 1.5 is rather unique. 1.5 is where someone literally have 2 types of diabetes at the same time. They have both type 1 and type 2 all at the same time. Okay? So here's what they found. 80% of all diabetics are generally classified or categorized as type 2. Within that 80%, 20% are type 1.5. And roughly about 10% of all the diabetics are type 1. So technically speaking, besides type 2, the second most common type of diabetes is actually diabetes type 1.5. That diabetes is a rather unique diabetes. It's an autoimmune type diabetes where someone have both type 1 and type 2 all at the same time. And I'll give you some basic characteristics that you can actually use to identify that, because I'll tell you this much. Almost 100% of the time, all type 1.5 diabetics are always misdiagnosed. Okay? Almost 100% of the time, all type 1.5 diabetics are all misdiagnosed and are all assigned to be a type 2 when technically speaking they are 1.5 and their treatment will be slightly different. Let me kind of give you some basic causes of 1.5, kind of give you a little thing about it, and then I'll give you a testimony and different things as we deal with it. Normally damage to the pancreas is one of the things that can actually cause both type 1 and 1.5. Both type 1 and type 1.5 can be drug-induced. Sometimes kids are given steroids, and after giving steroids, automatically they come down with diabetes. It could be a viral infection that can actually cause this. Chronic vitamin D deficiency can also be a cause of this 1.5 or even type 1. Iodine deficiency, gluten sensitivity. You know, I'll tell you, I've watched individuals in this group, right? And they'll say, hey, Brother Luke, I have sinus, I have allergies, and I would send them a list. Don't eat this, 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 this. And then all of a sudden, they're like, well, what am I going to eat? And I said, well, I'll tell you this much. The things that are on that list might be food for somebody else. But to you, it is not food. It is actually a poison. And saints, here's the situation. You begin or you continue to assault the immune system by eating foods that you are allergic to. Eventually, it can actually have an adverse reaction on you and actually send you into that diabetes 1.5. So my recommendation to you, saints, especially if you have young kids and so forth, and the kids have allergies to specific foods, do not force them to eat foods that they are allergic to. If you do, be it force or just give it to them because you don't want to deal with the fussing to tell them not to eat it, eventually they can actually get something worse where it makes things even worse to deal with. LADA, latent autoimmune diabetes in adult, is a form of autoimmune diabetes. It's a combination of someone having both type 1 and type 2 at the same time. Some people call it double whammy. Some people call it double jeopardy. But technically speaking, the name of it is called LADA, where this individual is actually dealing with two types of diabetes all at the same time. I remember the other day I went to Jamaica, and a tall, slender young man came up to me. We were in Portmore, and we began talking about the work that we're doing, the medical missionary work, and he mentioned that he was a medical missionary, and he got trained at one of the sister institutions, and I taught at the parent institution. He went to the sister institution. The sister institution came out of the parent institution. So as I'm there talking with him, I asked him, you know, what is he dealing with? You know, he says, Brother Luke, I'm actually dealing with diabetes. He says, I'm a type 2 diabetic. I looked at him square in the face and I said, sir, you are not a type 2 diabetic. He says, what do you mean? I said, you have something else, you know, and we'll talk a little, but I'll tell you what you have. But I'll tell you this much, you're not a type 2 diabetic, okay? So he told me he actually went to this institution. He went and got trained as a medical missionary. So I looked at him and I asked him, and they did not pick up on this disease and tell you how to fix your disease while you're there as a student? He says, well, they gave him treatment, but the disease was still there. And says that goes hand in hand with what I'm sharing with you this evening. Because almost 100% of them are misdiagnosed, many times the treatment that is offered to them are normally the incorrect treatment, and as a result, you do not get the result. I'll tell you this much. To date, everyone that I can recall of working with, I've been able to work with them successfully where none of them are on any insulin, and they have been able to transition off of their medication and just either use herbal agents or not using anything at all. But I can tell you this much, that double diabetes sometimes can be somewhat challenging. However, if you persevere, you sit back and watch the glory of God. Let's continue here. I'll continue with the testimony, but let me just change my screen a second here. Let's see here. Okay, good. So while he and I began talking, we were, we're just going back and forth and we're talking. I began asking him some basic questions, and after I realized he had been to an institution that they should have already been able to rectify his issue, he shared with me that there was a pain in his back, and it has been there for years. And he wants to get rid of it, but did not know how to get rid of it. So I asked him a few questions, got an idea of where he worked. He had worked for the government of Jamaica for years. And I said to him, it sounds like you have chronic vitamin D deficiency, and it's very likely that that is the cause of your autoimmune response that you're actually dealing with. Well, as he and I continued to talk a little bit more, I went ahead and told him how much vitamin D I would have recommended for his condition. He decided to go ahead and get that which I'd recommended to him. And saints, lo and behold, within about 2 days, all the back pain that he had, like right below one of the kidneys, completely went away. Well, saints, let me tell you, he was so shocked that he says, nah, cannot be. You know what he did, saints? He stopped taking the vitamin D, and within a day, all the pain returned. He began taking the vitamin D again, and within a couple of days again, all the pain stopped again. So as a result, he was convicted that it was the vitamin D deficiency that caused the pain, and that was also sitting at the foundation of his autoimmune response. Well, saints, put him on the program, and in no time, by God's grace, the pain completely subsided. And to the best of my knowledge, even today, he's doing fine. I spoke to him somewhat, I think, last year, and he was doing fine. He never mentioned to me that he was having any issue along that line anymore. But he would have been a 1.5. I remember I was in Trinidad, and I met another gentleman, tall, slender gentleman again. We were in the Granby area, and he came up to me and says, Brother Luke, I am a diabetic. I am a type 2 diabetic. And I looked him square in the face and said, you know, you might be a diabetic, but you sure ain't no type 2. And he says, what do you mean, Brother Luke? I said, just by looking at your physique, you are a man that tend to be more slender, and those are not the characteristics of a type 2 diabetic. You'll know that people who are type 2 tend to have more of a fuller figure. The figure he had was more in line with that of a type 1. If you ever go out and look at people who are type 1 diabetic, they tend to have more of a slender stature. Very rarely, and when I say really, I mean really, very rarely you'll ever find a full-figured type 2 diabetic. As a matter of fact, a type 1 diabetic is what I'm saying. As a matter of fact, if I've ever seen any, it might have been one in my entire lifetime. They are very rare, okay? Type 1 diabetic tend to have more of a slender stature. So the 1.5, one of the characteristics that they take from the type 1 diabetics is that they also, too, have a slender stature. I can tell you in all the places I've ever been to in traveling, the place that have the highest level of concentration of diabetes type 1.5 was actually St. Lucia. I had not found, I had never encountered a place like St. Lucia before. I was totally shocked when I saw the amount of individuals that actually was dealing with diabetes 1.5, and they all was misdiagnosed. And so back to Trinidad, I was helping the gentleman in Trinidad, put him on the program, and to date, that gentleman is completely free and clear, and he has nothing. Saints, I can tell you stories upon stories upon stories of 1.5. I can give you stories and stories upon stories of the type 2. I can also give you stories of type 1 that I've worked with and successfully have been able to reverse type 1 diabetes also too. Type 1 is a little challenging, but as the scripture says, it says, I can do all things through Christ, and I do not limit my Father. I'm talking Jesus Christ, my Lord, in terms of the ability and the work that he can do in terms of healing and restoring individuals. With type 1 diabetes, these individuals tend to develop that diabetes, below the age of 20. With this 1.5, it tends to occur later in life. It tends to occur after the age of 30, okay? They tend to have more of a slender physique, okay? Also to keep in mind that what happened with this group, and when the treatment that you're going to have to deal with is going to be like a dual treatment. It's going to be a treatment that encompasses both the type 1 as well as the type 2. But I'll tell you what I find when dealing with them. You may start off as a type, the 1.5, when they start off, normally they place an oral medication like metformin and the generic versions of those. They place in those, and they'll do well for a moment, but in no time they transition from oral medication to insulin within 7 years. Very, very fast transition. Sometime within months they make the transition. Sometime within years they'll make the transition, but they transition very fast. And even at times when they're on the oral medication, you'll find that they give you some outrageous numbers, very high outrageous numbers. Well, these are some of the basic characteristics of this autoimmune diabetes, the latter. Latent autoimmune diabetes in adult, some people call it double whammy, some people call it double jeopardy, but it's actually both type 1 and type 2 diabetes combined. The people who have this, they're unlikely to have any family history with type 2 diabetes. As I share with you, you'll be amazed. There are people who tend to have allergies to wheat, but yet they still continue. Well, guess what? If you can continue to assault the body, many times the body will respond by giving you an autoimmune response, an autoimmune diabetes. Remember this, autoimmunity begins in the gut. 80% of your immune system is in the stomach. So with that being said, you'll be mindful not to assault the body if you know that you're intolerant to something. What exactly is diabetes type 2? And this is where we're going to spend the bulk of our time. Remember now that diabetes occurs when the body becomes unable to handle glucose or sugar, which builds up to dangerous level in the blood. A diagnosis of diabetes is usually made when a blood sugar test is consistently above 126 milligrams per deciliter or 7.0 millimoles per liter. Now, Saints, I want to share something with you. The U.S. side, the U.S. Diabetic Association, they tend to use the milligrams per deciliter. That's the 126 milligrams per deciliter. When you get to Canada and the U.K., they tend to use the millimoles per liter. That's the 7.0. Well, you can go back and forth between both of them. And the way you do it, you'll divide 18. 18 is that common denominator. Divide 18 into 126 and you get 7.0. Or you multiply 18 by 7 and you get 126. So you're going to either divide or multiply and you're able to convert both milligrams per deciliter or millimoles per liter. That common denominator is 18, and you can go back and forth to figure out which system that person is being tested on, and you can easily figure it out by using that 18. So just keep that in mind. Blood sugar ranges, and it makes a difference. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you a story. And since I have so many stories that I can share on this topic, but I think this is a sweet one. This would be a good one to share. I remember I was training a young lady in the U.S., and for individuals who are listening who don't have an idea what Brother Luke looks like, I am a man of color, of of Caribbean descendants. My dad is Antiguan and my mom is Kittian, okay, and they are all black. So just thought I'd share that with you with the testimony I'm about to share. I was helping this young lady, and she is a Caucasian young lady, and she let's see can't remember her background, but she's Caucasian. And, you know, she and I got along great. You know what I mean? We had a great time. We both were medical missionaries. And I'm training her. And there's this gentleman. He is our leader. He's Italian. And, you know, because I had more experience in this field, and the young lady says, hey, I want to work with Brother Luke. I want to get to have him train me that I have a better understanding doing this work. So I took her out with me, and I'm training her, and we're doing good and different things like that. And after she did a few with me, and she began, you know, start moving her way around, maneuvering her way, having some level of understanding, the gentleman that I told you about, the Italian gentleman who is the leader, he came up to her, and he said to her, listen, Brother Luke, I've already trained you. You have enough information. You don't need him anymore. You can go out and do these things on your own. And as you work on your own, everything you get stays with you. You don't have to share anything with him. And it will just be you alone, and you can harvest. And if you need help, I can come and help you, and we can do it together. Well, lo and behold, the young lady decided to go along with what the gentleman said. And she went ahead and she did a lecture at a First Day church. And, you know, as saints, as you see, the way that Sister Nash and I put our presentation together, they are very structured. So if we share our presentation with someone and they go out, it is easy for anybody to present our presentations, and, you know, with ease, people will understand. So she actually went and she did the presentation. He went ahead and supported her. And while they were at the church, the pastor's wife was a nurse, okay? And, you know, being a nurse, she would have had multiple experience in this specific area, so she can ask specific questions that can easily baffle this young lady who is out there on her own for the first time and did not have proper support. And lo and behold, that's exactly what the pastor's wife did. But they didn't say anything. So here's what happened. After she did the presentation, many people were excited after they heard what she said. And she went and she started doing visitation with the individuals. Well, when she visited one specific young lady, she put the young lady on the plan, but what happened, remember I told you she didn't have much experience because I was training her. She had just kind of begun to get a grip of everything. And what ended up happening is that instead of telling the diabetic patient or the diabetic guest to check their blood sugar before they eat, she told them to check it after they eat. And guess what happened? The lady is following the program to a T, and every time the lady checked her blood sugar, the lady's blood sugar is higher than it was before she started the program. So the lady went to her, and the lady started complaining and saying, listen, since I've been on your program, I'm feeling great, but guess what? My blood sugar is higher than it was before I started on the program. So the girl is baffled. She doesn't have a clue. And then finally, the pastor's wife stepped in and said, of course it's going to be higher because you're testing it at the wrong time. She told you wrong information. So guess what? She completely lost her credibility. As a matter of fact, the church told her she's not allowed to speak to no more of the church members because she's putting their members at risk, and she had to stop. She called me and she says, Brother Luke, here is what happened. can you explain to me what I did wrong? I says, oh, yeah, it's a simple situation. You told the lady to check after she ate instead of having her check before she ate. And by doing that, of course, the blood sugar level is going to be tremendously higher. And she says, you kidding me? I said, yeah, that's what you did. So even though the lady was doing good and feeling good, I was getting the reversal. The reason why the numbers did not add up, because you told her to check at the wrong time. Saints, why am I saying this to you this evening? Because I remember the other day, I was putting some information out in the group, and one person said to me, they says, look, Brother Luke, just put the notes out, I'm fine. I said, oh, blessed be the name of the Lord. I said, I don't put notes out just like that, because notes comes with instructions. And that's why I am so excited when I see so many people come out tonight for the live training, because in the Q&A, we're able to handle specific items that may not be covered in the lecture, okay? And that section is not recorded. So you get the response, you get the details, you get the satisfaction of your questions answered, and it helps to prevent you from falling into situations like what I'm talking about this evening. That young lady, the medical missionary, she eventually got discouraged and basically stopped doing the medical missionary side of the work, and she would just do basic cooking schools and so forth here and there, but she never went back into the lectures and different things along that line. And so, saints, I want to tell you, be careful. There are folks going to say, oh, you don't need to go through that training. Just, you have enough information. He gave you the book. He gave you the companion. You have it here. Some people may even say, listen, we don't even need to listen to any of those lectures that they're doing online. Just go and copy the answers out of the companion guide and put it right in the book, and you'll be fine. You'll be able to just ace that and get a certificate. Saints, it doesn't work that way. We don't give, Sister Nash and I don't give certificates like that. You got to prove that you know the information, that if we give you our certificate with our signature and know that God, the God of heaven, holds us accountable, you can bet your last whatever that we will make sure that you're held accountable. I'll tell you this much. You see the folks that are doing the medical missionary training in New York right now as we speak, not one of them have ever gotten a certificate from Sister Nash and I, and it has now been 9 years. So in 9 years, 9 years later, none of them have ever received a certificate of completion from any of us. So I just want to let you know that if you guys think you guys can just do the work any and anyhow and send it in to us, oh no, it doesn't work that way. I'll tell you a story, and this young lady, I'll call her name because she's one of the teachers, and by June, she would have graduated and would have become a naturopathic doctor. So I'll call her name because she and I talk about it, and I know that it's okay to do so. Her name is Sister Emmons, Saints, and you guys are going to see a Sister Emmons in the group, and she's one of the person that I say is a teacher that she teaches with us. Years ago, when she was being trained, Saints, you know what she did to me? She just went ahead and just write any answer in the book, thinking that we would not check the book and stuff like that. And I just went through, and I'm like, my goodness, this girl probably think that we are crazy or something, or just sloppy or careless. She just put any crazy answer she wanted in the book. I called her aside and I said, excuse me, you see this work that you just did? It is totally unacceptable. And I'll tell you this much. If this is the way you're going to do the work, there's no way that you'll ever be able to train with us. Because what happened, with this type of sloppy work, I guarantee you, you will cause debt on the medical missionary field. And we don't have time for you letting souls die in your hand by the fact that you're not careful enough to take proper time to do good work. And saying she apologized, and I'll tell you what she did. She went back and she redid everything, and she did it perfect. Saints, as a matter of fact, she did the work so clean that just the other day, while she was going through her naturopathic course, she was taking some exams. The teachers to her sent a message back and just complimented her on how thorough and detailed her work was. That was the same person years ago who wanted to put sloppy work before Sister Nash and myself, and we rejected the work. I'll tell you another story. I remember I was in Georgia. This gentleman called me and he says, James, I want to come and work with you guys. I said, please do. And since when he came, I decided to test him. You know, in the spirit of prophecy, it says every free mortal agent needs to be tested for loyalty. So I decided to test him. But I didn't tell him I was testing him. I wanted to see what his motive was. Did he want to do the work for finances, or did he do it because he has a raw appetite for soul winning? Well, since the home that I lived in, we had a nice lawn across the front. And what I will do for, just kind of relaxation, I'll just go on the lawn and I would just pull out every single weed by hand. I'll just take my time. I'll start in one corner and I'll pull out every weed that I encounter. And I'll do as much as I can today. Then I come back tomorrow, do as much as I can. And over the course of maybe a week, I would have gotten every single weed in the lawn. I just take my time, one weed at a time. Just like when I work with individual, one soul at a time. And since that's why many times some of you guys are like, hey, Brother Luke, can you help me? And I would say, no, call Dr. Lamley. And the reason being, I know I take my time to do a thorough job. And because I take my time, it requires proper time to do a thorough job. And if I know I cannot give you the thorough work, I tell you straight up, I'm sorry, I can't. My hands are full, get somebody else. But I'll tell you, if any of you are like patient enough and willing to take your time and, hey, Brother Luke, just hit me here, I'll be more than willing to work with you. But there's one thing I got to tell you guys. If you ask me to help you and I'm talking to you and you start letting me wait too long, I'm gone. You know what I mean? I'm not going to just hang there and wait and wait and wait and wait and wait, So just to kind of give you some feedback. But going back to the gentleman, I said to him, hey, let's go out here and pull some weed. And we are on the lawn pulling weed. And what I did, I peeked over at him to see how he pulled his weed. And you know what he did? He just went on, and start snapping the head of all the weeds off. Snap, 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 snap. He just pulled the head off of all the weed. Since, do you know by the end of a week that the weeds then began growing back? They began growing more leaves again and so forth, because he did not go to the root and solve the problem by uprooting the weed. I know that there's some of you guys listening tonight that will not go to the bottom of the problem and uproot the weed, uproot the problem to make sure that that which you're giving is correct. And I want to encourage you to take your time. The reason why 100% of these diabetics, 1.5, goes undiagnosed is because people are not taking their time to do a thorough work. Saints, I can easily just walk into a situation, and in no time I can assess a situation and tell you what it is and be able to rectify it, simply because of the fact I take my time to do a thorough work. Let me tell you a story that just happened last week. I am at home, and one of the staff called me from the health food store. And the staff said to me, James, there's a young lady here, and her mouth is filled with sores. And it's something that she has been dealing with for a long time, and nobody can figure out what her problem is. I said to the staff, tell her to buy a herb called camu camu. Okay, it's a fruit, but it's in like a dried powder format, like capsule form. I said, tell her to buy the camel, and I have her take 2 capsules. Each capsule is 500 milligrams. Have her take 2 capsules every time she eats. Saying she bought 12. Listen to this. She bought 12 capsules. And within a day, she would have taken 6. Saints, do you know, by the time she had finished taking all 12, which would have been 2 days, all that was left was one small little sore in her mouth. She came back, she came back, I think Monday, because, we are closed for Sabbath, but we also open on Sunday, but some people don't know we are open on Sunday. So she came back Monday. When she came, she says, can I get another pack of those camel? And she looked at me and she says, were you the gentleman I was speaking to on the phone? I said, yes, I was. And she began telling the story. And then she looked and she saw the assistant that worked at the store with me. And she says, look, I feel I can just walk up to you and kiss you. Look, she's so excited because, saints, she had suffered for years with these sores in her mouth. And nobody can tell her that the cause of all these sores was vitamin C deficiency. And just by asking a few questions and just hearing what her situation was, I was able to determine that it was a vitamin D deficiency that had caused the sores in her mouth, and recommended the #1 source of vitamin C on the face of the earth, which is camel. And within a couple of days, that situation was completely rectified. Saints, the story that I told you, my friend has a little son having seizure. Talked to her a little, found out that she had given the child too much vitamin D, and we used charcoal, pulled the excess vitamin D out, seizures completely stopped. Saints, when you can take your time, an elderly lady came to see me, told me that her aunt, who is even more elderly than her, was walking, and in 1 week, the elderly lady stopped walk. I asked a few little questions, found out that the elderly lady who stopped walk was not exposed to sun. We gave her vitamin D3 supplement in the right dosage, and in less than 1 week, that 93-year-old was walking again. Either 93 or 95 she was. She began walking again. Saints, what I'm trying to tell you, if you take your time and do a thorough job and listen to the customers, listen to people, listen to your mom, listen to your dad, listen to your children, listen to your friend, listen to your co-workers, you'll be able to properly ascertain the true characteristics of the disease and get the proper result. Am I making sense here, Saints? If I'm making sense, just go ahead and send me a little message and let me know that we're making sense. I know I went on a little long there, but I kind of just want to let you understand why it's important to do the work a thorough way and to take your time as you're doing the work. They are individuals now. Listen good now, Saints. They are individuals that if you don't take your time and do a thorough work, you can actually cause the life of individuals out there. And we got to make sure that when we do this work, no lives are lost unnecessarily. Okay? If a life is lost, make it be that it was the will of God to let that life go to sleep. But no lives are lost unnecessarily. And let me tell you why I'm saying this. I remember the other day a missionary called me, and he says, Brother Luke, I want to tell you, I quit. I said, what do you mean by you quit? He says, I quit. I quit being a medical missionary. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, we were working with someone, and the person died on us. And the attorney came, and he told us not to leave the area because we may take action against you guys. And he says, look, too stressful. I don't want to deal with this. I said, really? I said, let me tell you, I work with people so many times, and the majority of the time, I never touch anybody. And these were individuals that were putting their hands and touching individuals. I said, I'm able to help individuals and heal them without even touching them, just by giving them proper instructions, you know. He says, "You're kidding me, Brother Luke." I said, "Yeah." I said, "Why don't you come with me and I'll show you how?" And he came with me, and I began showing him that we're able to heal individuals without having to put our hands in them. You know, once in a blue moon, you may have one or two individuals that you may have to put your hands on, but the majority of the time, you do not have to touch individuals for complete restoration and healing. So after I spoke to him, showed him what I was doing, I was able to encourage him and bring him back into the work. I took him out and retrained him, and today he's still in the work today. And this was about, wow, maybe about 10 years ago when this occurred. So just to kind of give you some heads up, some of you guys who are on right now might be students that are listening. Some of you might have friends or family members that have problems. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do. I'm going to give specific instructions concerning the sickness and disease, and it's important to follow the instructions. Let me give you a perfect example of someone that I worked with who did not follow the instructions, and he almost cost himself his life. I remember I was in Honduras, and as you hear the name Honduras, it will kind of indicate to you it's a Spanish-speaking country. Now, Brother Luke in a Spanish-speaking country, and Brother Luke does not speak Spanish, nor has he gotten the gift of tongues as yet. Amen? And you hear it, as yet. So I'm staying with an English-speaking family in Honduras. And I found out that the husband, he actually is diabetic. And he and I began talking and stuff like that. And he rides about 150 miles per day, per 120 or 150, but I think it's 150 miles per day he rides, okay? Every day he rides that round trip. And nothing never happened to him. So after he and I began talking, I said to him, I said, I know you ride 150 miles per day, but there's a difference between riding and walking, and I want to advise you that if you're going to go on the program, you need to follow the instructions as I outlay it. Oh, yeah, Brother Luke, I will. I said, okay. I said to him, whenever you go walking, take a fruit with you. My fruit of choice is an orange, but if you don't have orange, take a banana, take whatever you can get, but take a fruit with you. That if you start feeling lightheaded, if you start feeling dizzy, if you start feeling weird, just start eating the fruit, stop, turn around, and come back home. Well, saints, lo and behold, he decided to go walking. While he's there walking, his blood sugar began dropping on him. Guess what he didn't do? He did not take any fruit with him because he said, Brother Luke, I ride 150 miles per day, and I have never had a problem with my blood sugar. So if I got to just go and walk for 1 hour, I doubt that I'll ever have a problem with blood sugar. Saints, listen to this. What he didn't realize that 1 hour of continuous walking is actually equal to 20 units of insulin. This gentleman started walking, and his sugar dropped on him. And saints, listen to this. It was so early in the morning that all of the stores were basically closed, except for one that the owners, I guess, was just getting ready to either open or they had just opened. And he actually, at that time, I think he actually had to stop, and either he was laying on the ground or something, some position he was in, and he saw some individuals either at the store or going to the store, and he says, Mira, el diabetico, juice. Remember now, he's a English-speaking man in a Spanish country, didn't take the fruit that I told him to take, and his sugar dropped in him. It was so early in the morning that most stores were closed. This was the only store that was either open or just was opening, and it so happened that he had his crisis right by the store, and he just looked up and he said, "Mida, hey, el diabetico, juice, juice, juice." And however he said his thing, they were able to come to a conclusion that he was the diabetic and he needed some juice. And they ran into the store, got the juice, brought it to him, give it to him. He drank the juice, and he was able to recover. Instead, he turned around now and come home like I had told him. He went back again. Guess what happened again since? Same trip. Sugar dropped in him again, and he's about to go again. This time he stopped a taxi and hustled home. When he got to the home, he says, "Brother Luke, I want to apologize to you. You warned me, and I almost died twice this morning. That walk-in dropped my blood sugar so low that if these guys didn't give me some juice, I would not have made it back here this morning." He says, "I've ridden my bike every single day, 150 miles, and I've never, ever had a problem. But that walk-in is something else." And saints, that gentleman, after that day, he followed the instructions as we outlined, and I spoke to the family. I spoke to my friend who introduced me to the family, and he said that the husband and wife, they're still on the program, and they're doing excellent. So I just want to tell you, make sure that as we outline the instructions this evening, that you follow the instructions and you do not do your own thing. Because many times individuals get on the program and they want to do their own thing. They don't want to follow instructions, and as a result, they end up in danger where they can actually lose their life. Now, let's go to blood sugar ranges, okay? And I want to let you know, with blood sugar ranges, I tend to follow a more conservative approach. I tend to take a more conservative approach than the American Diabetic Association, than the Diabetic Association that Canada and the UK use. We tend to use more conservative numbers. The numbers we use are based on one of the labs that are in Georgia. It's the same lab that I dealt with when I worked at Wildwood Lifestyle Center and Hospital. Okay, so for normal blood sugar level will be between 65 and 99 milligrams per deciliter, and if you divide that by 18, it will be 3.6 to 5.5 millimoles per liter after an 8-hour fast. So you'll go to bed, you wake up after an 8-hour fast and check your numbers, and you should be between 65 to 99 milligrams per deciliter, or 3.6 to 5.5 millimoles per liter. Now, saints, I want to share something with you, right? On a daily basis, I have people come to my office / restaurant / health food store. They're all in one facility. And when people come, here's what they do. As they come, I have them bring their paperwork with them, meaning their blood result. And when they bring their result, what I found, and I just want to let you know, that someone can actually have normal blood sugar readings, but if they are close to that 99, they're like 95, 96, they're high 90s, many times they can begin to experience diabetic symptoms in the high 90s. Okay, so keep that in mind. Your blood sugar reading could possibly be within the normal range, but because you are a high normal, you could begin to experience some level of diabetic issue. Okay, so keep that in mind. So normal is 65 to 99. However, if you're high normal, meaning in the 90s, high 90s, 95 and up, I find that these individuals tend to have some of the same symptoms as someone else who is a full-blown diabetic. You also have prediabetes, And the fasting blood sugar levels after an 8-hour fast normally range between 100 to 125 milligrams per deciliter, or 5.6 to 6.9 millimoles per liter after an 8-hour fast. Now, Saints, one of the things you're going to find as you look out on diabetics research, these guys are changing numbers all the time. And you know the reason for changing numbers a lot of the time? To get more individuals on medication. Okay? Just like they changed the ranges for high blood pressure, putting more individuals on meds again. So keep that in mind so you don't get distracted as you see numbers shift on you from time to time. Full-blown diabetes. A diagnosis of diabetes is usually made when a blood sugar test is consistently above 126 milligrams per deciliter or 7.0 millimoles per liter after an 8-hour fast. And this is something that if you have done it maybe 3 or 4 times and it comes back consistently that you're running in these range, then you can say with accuracy that this individual is a full-blown diabetic. Now, I want to give another testimony here. I remember a young lady came to me and I was helping her. And when I say young, you'll find anyone under the age of 100, I always call them young, you know. So young lady doesn't mean real young. Young lady can be very mature, okay? It so happened that this was a mature person. So this young lady came to me, and she and I began talking. And as we were talking, and I found out she was a diabetic, I put her on the program, and she began doing good in terms of following everything I was saying, or that I've taught her. But Saints, listen to what happened. Her blood sugar began coming back at some crazy numbers, extremely high. And I'm like, I said, are you cheating? I said, Mommy, are you cheating? I said, do me a favor. You need to tell me the truth, because if you don't tell me the truth, then it's hard for me to assist you. Okay? You need to tell me the truth. Are you cheating? She says, Brother Luke, I am not cheating. I'm doing every single thing you tell me, Brother Luke. And Saints, after she told me that she was doing everything, it's like the Lord said to me, have her bring the strips and check the strips to see what the expiration date on the strips were. Saints, I had her go and get the test strips and bring it back for me. Remember, we're by phone, okay? I'm on phone, and I said, Mommy, can you just read the best by dates on those test strips? Those strips were about 2 or 3 years old, Saints, that she was actually using. They had expired, they were spoiled, they were no good. So one of the things that I do whenever I'm working with people who are diabetic and they have machines, I always check with them to make sure that they have new strips or strips that are still valid, okay? Because bad strips can give you bad numbers. Says, do you know that by the time we correct the strips and had to put the strips in, her blood sugar was within normal ranges? So just to kind of give you some heads up, keep that in mind. You know, especially some of you may have strips at home that you have not used in a while, or you may have strips that that have expired in you. And as a result, they are likely to give you bad numbers. So make sure your strips are valid. Normal glucose metabolism. You eat the food is digested, and carbohydrates is broken down into simple or complex sugar. Glucose enters the blood. Insulin is produced by the pancreas to transport the sugar distribution to cells about the body. Insulin acts like an usher, opens the door for glucose to enter into different cells. When you're dealing with like type 1, you have a dysfunctional glucose metabolism. Insulin producing cells are destroyed or damaged. That's with type 1. But with type 2, the insulin producing cells are not damaged, but the body ignores the distribution of the sugar. Okay, so keep that in mind. What I'm going to do, I'm going to take my time and I'm going to give you an explanation of how this distribution works. Okay, I want to give you an example of how this distribution works. But before I give you an example of the distribution, I want to share one more testimony with you. And it's important that I share these testimony with you, so in that way you know what's going on. I can give it to you with diabetes, but I'm not going to give you the testimony on diabetes. I'm going to use a different testimony. I think this one, I had one that just happened about 2 weeks ago that blew my mind, but I'm not going to give you that one. I'm going to give you one that happened, let's see here, last year. Not last year. Yeah, that occurred last year. Well, it started the year before. It started in 2016, and it ended in April of last year. Okay, let me tell you that testimony. Young lady came into me, and she was having some problems. She was having real bad digestive issues, and her stomach was getting bloated. And so I asked her if we can go ahead and sign up for consultation. She said yes. At that time, both Chef and I determined that we were going to help her with her consultation. So Chef and myself sat with the young lady, and it just so happened that the young lady brought her mom. And while we were there talking, I decided, since I asked a lot of questions, just because of the experience I have in the work, I don't take things for granted. I ask some of the questions, and you may like, Brother Luke, why are you asking such a question? Because I've realized that sometimes you have to ask the same question about 5, 6, 7 different ways sometimes to get the truth. Because one of the things you're going to find out that a lot of times people lie to you. Okay? So the young lady and Chef, myself, Chef, the young lady, and her mom, we're doing a consultation. The young lady, she's about 22, 23, somewhere around there. And we're doing the consultation. And while doing the consultation with her stomach, and she having some weird feelings, and her stomach is growing, I asked her, I said, can I ask you a personal question? She said, sure. I said, could it be that maybe you might be pregnant? She says, oh no, Brother Luke, I am a virgin. Now, since I had other questions, but after she said she was a virgin, at that time, I'm like, okay, that's the absolute. So there's no other way I can get around that one answer. So I determined not to ask any more questions because of her response in that situation. So I went ahead and I made some suggestions in terms of what we can do. We changed her diet, kind of did some cleanses and different things along that line. And she began feeling good and everything, but yet still the stomach keep growing. And Saints, I got to tell you, it baffled me. It baffled me to a point that after about, let's see, about 4 months, after about maybe 4 months of, 5 months of this thing baffling me, and the stomach keep growing, I whispered to Chef and said, Chef, this girl might have cancer. And I don't know how to break this to her. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to have her do some tests, and we're going to figure out what's going on. So I send her to the hospital to do some blood work. She went up to the hospital, did the blood work. While she was up there doing the blood work, the nurse looked at her and said, well, everything is fine except you are about 5 months pregnant, and it's a healthy baby, and everything looks good. Saints, the mom was so embarrassed. The mom couldn't even come back and tell me what had happened. The daughter, she was like, "Oh, Mom, I was with someone and just tried once, but I never thought anything happened." But lo and behold, she was pregnant. And Saints, what I'm saying, the reason why I'm telling you this story, I want to share what happened. I began giving her certain treatments that could have easily caused a miscarriage. And if I had continued with some of the treatments that I was giving her, she would have had a miscarriage. Why am I saying this, telling you guys this testimony? It is so important that when we assist in you, that you're honest and you're truthful. Because if you're dishonest, it can possibly cause a life. It might be your life, it might be someone else's life. It's important that you tell us straight up what we're dealing with. We know that many times individuals tend to tell us lie, but please, if you can, just be honest and truthful with us, and it will help us in being able to best serve you. I'll tell you what happened to me about 2 weeks ago. Young lady sent a message to me, and she says, Brother Luke, my girlfriend is dealing with warts, and she needs assistance. I said, okay, why don't you have her go to the doctor? Well, we want to use natural remedies. I said, well, she still needs to go to the doctor. The doctor can do some tests, and once the doctor tests and verify that it is warts, you guys come back to me, and I'll give you some natural remedies. She said, James, you can't just give the natural remedies without her going and do the test? I said, no, that would be very irresponsible. I don't even know what she have, and for me to sit down and start saying buy this and get that, when technically speaking she doesn't have none of the above, that's irresponsible. As a matter of fact, she may not even have warts. And then the person said to me, no, she does have warts. I say, how do you know? Well, she went on the internet and she checked, and the things that she have looks just like the things on the internet. I said, okay. I said, well, tell you what, we need to get some tests done in order to be able to accurately figure out what was going on. And I said, well, I'm not giving any treatment, period. And after a couple of days, the person came back again. James, you think you can maybe just give the treatment for my girlfriend? I said, no, absolutely not. And she says, well, my girlfriend doesn't have any resources to go to the hospital and so forth. I said, she can ask her family. I'm sure they'll help. She said that if she asks her family, both mom and dad will kill her. I said, well, is it you? This is a former co-worker of ours. She says, no, it's not me. I said, well, if it was you, I would help you. I would help you, make sure you get proper medical situations and so forth. She says, well, no, it's not me. I says, okay, well, I don't know your friend. Let her parents help her. And the person came back again. James, what if it was me? Would you help? I said, of course I'd help if it was you. She said, I think you're going to be disappointed. I said, well, I wouldn't be disappointed. Just if it's you, I'll gladly help. And lo and behold, she was the individual that was dealing with the health crisis. I end up having one of the females that work with me, took her to the medical doctor. We got her proper treatment, took her to the hospital, got her some tests and everything done that she could be properly taken care of. But the bottom line was, initially when she called us, she began lying to us. She did not want to tell us that she was the individual. And after she told us, then we took her and made sure she got proper testing and different things, so in that way that things could be verified and proper treatment can be given. So I'm saying all this to tell you that many times individuals may not always tell you the truth. So when you're dealing with individuals at times, as much paperwork you can peek at to kind of confirm things would work real good. Sometimes people get names of diseases mixed up, and they may tell you a wrong disease when it's another one, and as a result, the treatment will vary, and it can cause health problems. So try your best as much as possible to be able to verify that that which is being said to you is correct, that you can give the best information. I hope that little information there was helpful. Now, I want to give an example of how this diabetes thing works. And we're going to pause. We'll stop after I give that example. Okay? So here's the example that I want to give. Like right now, I'm actually speaking to you from my bedroom. Okay? So just imagine. I want you to use your imagination, right? I am in my bedroom. The door is closed. And I have, let me see how many windows I have. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, I have 9 windows, including like a double door. So I have there too. And then the bathroom, I have multiple windows there again too. So as you can hear that when I open my windows, and they're always open, I get tremendous amount of breeze that comes through my room. You can tell I have a lot of windows in my room. Okay? With that being said, I want to show you where I'm going. I am standing in my room. I want you to imagine my room as being the cell. Come on, Saints. I want you guys to just hit me up on the screen a little. Let me know that you understand what I'm saying. What is my room called? I'm in the room, and the room is called the cell. What is the room called? I just want to look and see somebody can at least say the answer. Okay, perfect. The room is called the cell. Okay? Now, the windows that I'm talking about, remember I told you I have windows and doors in my room. The windows and doors, they're called insulin receptors. Okay? So, the windows and doors, they're called what? Insulin receptors. So now, Saints, what are the windows and doors called? Just go ahead and hit me up. Let me just see my numbers move in. Okay, amen. They're called insulin receptors. But here's what we're going to do. We're not going to call them insulin receptors right now. What I want you to call them, I want you to call them doors. Okay? So the windows and doors, what are we going to call them? We are going to call them doors. I'm standing where? In the cell. Okay? The windows and doors, we're going to call them what? Doors. Even though technically there would be insulin receptors. Okay? Now, I'm going to take you and I'm going to put you in my bedroom. I'm going to put everyone that's in the group, I'm going to put all of you guys in the bedroom. So where you guys at? You guys are in the bedroom, which means that you are in the cell. Myself now, I'm going to go out on the veranda, so I am on the outside. So where am I at? I am on the veranda, which means that I'm outside of the cell. You are in the cell, okay? So keep that in mind. You are in the cell. I am outside the cell. The windows and doors are called doors. Are we making sense so far? You got to work with me a little. I'm going somewhere. So watch this now. The pancreas produces what? Insulin. Insulin has 2 hands. Watch this. One hand grabs the sugar. The other hand opens the door. Remember, I'm out on the veranda. The other hand, so I grab the sugar because I'm insulin. Grab the sugar. Open the door, put the sugar into the cell, and I close the door back. Come on, Saints. Does that make sense? Come on. If it makes sense, just hit me up. Hit me up. I'm watching to see somebody hit me up. Okay, I'm watching. Nobody see. Oh, praise the Lord. Let me repeat that again. Now, remember, you guys are where? Where are you guys? You guys are in the cell. Okay, so you guys are where? In the cell. Where am I at? I am outside the cell on the veranda. Okay? So I am insulin. And then you remember those doors and windows? We are calling them all what? Doors. Those are actually insulin receptors. But we're not going to call them insulin receptors. We're just going to call them doors. So watch this now. The pancreas produces what? Insulin. Insulin has what? Two hands. One hand grabs the sugar. The other hand opens the door, put the sugar into the cell, and closes the door back. If that's clear, you say amen. Come on, saints. I just want to make sure that you understand. Amen. Amen. Okay. Now watch this now. Let's say that you choose to eat a diet that is high in fat. Okay? You choose to eat a diet that is high in fat. Here's what the fat does. The fat actually comes up to the door, seal the door, lock it, and throw away the key. Are you with me, saints? Watch this. What does the fat do? The fat comes up to the door, seal the door. The fat seals off the door completely, lock it, and throw away the key. So watch this now. The pancreas produces what? Insulin. Insulin has two hands. One hand grabs the sugar. The other hand comes up to the door, try to open the door, but cannot open the door. Why not? Because the fat has locked the door, sealed it, and has thrown away the key. Come on, saints. Am I making sense there? So you remember I'm on the veranda, and I'm insulin. So the pancreas produces what? Insulin. Insulin has what? Two hands. One hand tries to open the door, but it cannot open the door. Why not? Because the fat, the chicken, fish, turkey, beef, pork, shrimp, lobster, conch, crab, butter, eggs, ice cream, cheese, animal milk, the olive oil, the coconut oil. You know how Jamaicans cook rice and so? Coconut oil in this, coconut oil in that. You know, coconut milk in that, coconut milk in that. All that fat has sealed the door, lock it, and throw away the key. So all of a sudden, guess what? Look at this now. The sugar start building up in the blood to dangerous level. As the sugar start building up into the blood to dangerous level, all of a sudden, watch this, the muscles and the liver kicks in. And the muscle and the liver start taking that excess sugar and they're storing it in the form of something called glycogen. But as the muscle and the liver are storing, all of a sudden, they get filled. They're like, look, my belly's full. I can't go any further. You need to call the fat cells. All of a sudden, fat cells jump in. Fat cells now start taking the sugar, converting it to fat, and begin storing it. But as fat cells are converting the sugar into fat and storing it, fat says, hey, that's a lot. I don't know how much I can handle. You remember back in the days they used to say, listen good, sugar causes diabetes. This is why they used to say sugar causes diabetes, because the fat cells will take the sugar, convert it to fat, and stores it as fat. Am I making sense, dear saints? Okay? So in this situation now, the fat cells now, they get to a point, the fat cells say, I'm sorry, there's nothing else that I can't do. They say, give it to the kidneys. I'm sure the kidneys can help out. And saints, look what happens all of a sudden now. The kidneys jump in. As the kidneys jump in, here's what happened now. Remember, the kidneys don't store. And because the kidneys do not store, guess what? They have to figure out a way how to get the sugar out of this blood. And as they try to get this sugar out of the blood, that's where we're going to run into a little complication. So here's what happened. Kidneys do not store. So the kidneys say, hey, get me all of the water that is in the body. Get me as much water that you can get me in the body. We are going to flush this sugar out of the body in the form of urine. Oh, by the way, I don't know if I told you guys this. Did I tell you guys about the polysisters? Let me ask you. Let me see. You guys got to hit me up and let me know if you guys know what I'm talking about here. You got to hit me up in here. Have you guys ever heard of the polysisters? Let me see here. Let me just look if anybody can hit me up and tell me. Okay, Shannon said no. Florence said no. Hort said yes. Ellison said no. Dorcia says no. You guys never heard of the polysisters? I know. So, Langley. Oh, Langley, why are you playing with me? Why are you giving away the stuff, Langley? Okay, listen to this. I know some of you guys who used to be out in the world, you're saying, oh, Brother Luke has been out of it for a while. He meant the Pointer Sisters. Oh, no, I didn't mean the Pointer Sisters, okay? Okay, I am talking the polysisters. Are you ready for the polysisters? Let me go back to Langley. Langley is hitting it on the head. Polysister number 1. Are you ready for this one? Polyuria frequency in urination. Says, watch this now. Whenever the blood sugar level is high, the body jumps in. This is the kidney's version of dealing with it. Remember, the liver stores, the liver converts this to glycogen. The fat cells convert it to fat. Now, the kidneys now does not have the ability to store. So guess what the kidneys do? They get it out of the body in the form of urine. So what happened here now is that when the blood sugar level start getting to dangerous level, something by the name of polyuria takes place. What is polyuria? Frequency in urination. So you'll find that a diabetic, okay, even if they didn't drink any water in a day, anytime that blood sugar level is high, all of a sudden they start urinating. Welcome to polysister number 1. That's polyuria frequency in urination. You also have something called polydipsia, okay? What is polydipsia? Come on, saints. What is polydipsia? Polydipsia now is excessive thirst. Anytime you find that you're letting out that much water, all of a sudden the mouth is going to get dry. You're going to start getting thirsty. So as you start getting thirsty, you're like, hey, I need something to drink. I'm very, very thirsty. So when the blood sugar level is high and you find that you're urinating, the thirst is going to follow. Welcome to polysister number 2. That's polydipsia. So follow me here now. You have polyuria, frequency in urination. Polydipsia, excessive thirst. And as Langley's saying there, Langley said the body is talking to us. The question is, are you listening? Says many times the body speaks, but we never listen. And I'm going to give you an example of the body speaking, and you may not be listening. Let me give you an example, and I'm going to come back to the third poly. I'm coming back to the third poly in a minute, but let me give you an example of the body speaking, and you may not be listening. How many guys have ever heard of the term acanthosis nigrans? Come on, if you've ever heard of the term acanthosis nigrans, just hit me up. Hit me up and let me know that you've heard of it. Okay, Langley said no. Okay, Shannon said yes. Okay, Dorcia said no. Okay, now let me share this with you. The body speaks. The question is, are you listening? There is something called acanthosis nigrans. Acanthosis nigrans is where individuals, they get these black spots on the side of both cheek. They get these black spots around their neck. They get it around their hand. The texture of the skin around the hand begin to become more velvety. Their elbows become black and dark. And what the body says, hey, listen, if you don't make some changes, you look out because I'm coming. You'll find that these marks tends to come 10 to 15 years before you're diagnosed with diabetes. If you make the changes, the marks completely go away. If you don't make the changes, before you know it, all of a sudden, you find that blood sugar start elevating. Many times I sit with individuals and I say, oh no, Brother Luke, you don't understand. The reason why I have the darkness on my hand is because when I am at my desk, I press on my hand all the time. I say, oh, blessed be the name of the Lord. I say, it has nothing to do with no pressing of any hand. What that is, that's a check engine light. Now, saints, watch me what I mean by a check engine light. let's say you have a car, okay? Let's say you have a car, and you're driving in your car, and the check engine light comes on. Are you able to still continue driving, or does the car at that time, that very moment, the car needs service? Okay, you got to tell me. Does at that very moment the car need service, or are you able to continue driving? Well, it says, of course you're able to continue driving. But guess what the car is saying? Hey, check engine light. Check engine light. If you don't make some changes, it's coming. And saints, the body will give you a warning at least 10 to 15 years before it actually comes. If the warning is heeded, the life is preserved. If the warning is not, you're in trouble. Okay? My recommendation to you. Someone put up here. Let's see here. I think that says, oh yeah, you also find it on the knee. You find it on the knee. You find it in the cracks and crevice. You know, like when you build a muscle, you fold your hands up like you're doing a muscle. You'll find a dark spot right between the crevices. So wherever there's cracks, crevices, you'll find that those areas tend to change color, and then you also see the texture of the skin also tends to change. It tends to become somewhat of a velvety type situation. Am I making sense, dear saints? Now, let's go to the third polycysters. I thought I'd put that one in. I'll give it a third polycyster, and I want to end with a little fun. I'm going to share something else, and I'll share one more thing else. And let me just look here. I see Brother Farley there, and I'm sure that Brother Farley may have something to say. Let me open Brother Farley up. Brother Farley, I'm going to open you up. So just make sure your environment is conducive for teaching. So I'm going to just take your mic off, okay? So your mic is open right now, Brother Farley, in the event you're going to speak after I start, after I say a few things here. So let's see here. Did I get him? Okay, Brother Farley, you're live, okay? So just know that you are live, okay? Just want to tell you. Okay, so I want to share one more thing here. I want to go to the third polycyster. So we have polyuria, frequency in urination, polydipsia, excessive thirst, and the last polycyster, her name is polyphagia, okay? Polyphagia. And polyphagia has to do with excessive appetite. So you'll find that individuals who are having these issues, all of a sudden, they find that they just want to eat and eat. Someone says, there's no hunger like that of a diabetic hunger. Let me explain to you what I mean by that. Okay? And I'll give you an example. Remember now that you guys are where? You guys are where? Inside the cell. Am I making sense? You guys are inside the cell. Where am I at? I am outside the cell. Remember, in order for energy to be given to the cell, I have to give the sugar, take the sugar and put into the cell. If there's no energy or sugar getting into the cell, there's no way that that cell will have energy. Am I making sense here? So many times you'll find that diabetics will say, man, I just feel so sluggish, I'm exhausted, I'm weak, I'm tired. They have no energy. It's like I have no energy at all. Why? Because the sugar is not getting into the cell. Am I making sense, dear saints? So because the sugar is not getting into the cell, the energy level is going to be very lax, very low. So what these individuals say, I think I know what I need to do. I need to go and eat something. Maybe if I eat, that will give me the energy that I need. So one of the things that you'll find is that diabetics tend to eat a lot, hoping that by eating, they're going to get that desired energy that they so long missed. Okay? And there's where we get into our third polyphagia, excessive hunger, excessive appetite. Am I making sense, these things? Those are our polycysters. Those are the classic symptoms for diabetes. And we're going to get into a little bit more detail into this situation, but I just kind of want to set the stage, set the standard put everything in place as we deal with this in a systematic manner. Now, as I'm closing out this situation here, I want to give you just a little story. Brother Kelly and I did this section, and Brother Kelly aced it all the way through. Okay, listen good. Back in the days when they did not have testing devices, name roughly about 2 or 3 ways that someone can tell if they are spilling sugar without a diabetic machine. Without a diabetic testing machine, name roughly 2 or 3 old-time ways that you can tell if you're spilling sugar without a machine. Let me see here. Okay, I see Hort actually says taste your urine. That is correct. I want to let you know that back in the olden days, that physicians literally used to taste your urine. You know, and says, let me tell you something. I can imagine that for those people who don't drink any water, when those physicians look at your urine, they didn't even waste their time tasting those urine. They're like, I ain't waste my time tasting that. Straight diabetic. You know, whether or not the person was diabetic or not, they just probably just look at that and say, oh, no, I ain't tasting that one right there. You know, I mean, straight diabetic. And remember this now. Urine is sterile, so, you know, you don't have to worry about anything major there, you know. But, so they used to taste it. That's one of the ways that they used to test, do it back in the days. And Dorcia put out a good answer there, too. She says that the ants will actually eat the urine, okay? I know some of you guys that might be living in New York right now and say, Brother Luke, I went outside and I let something there and no ants came. Of course, the ants are smart enough not to come out during the winter season. But if you want to go to Jamaica or come to Antigua where we have ants all year round, you let something out outside and we'll see if the ants eat it. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you guys what happened, right? You know why people have to be careful? Is that when you're spilling sugar, sometimes you spill the sugar in the urinal, in the toilet. You'll spill it in the toilet when you urinate, and you'll see ants will immediately climb into your toilet bowl and try to eat the sugar out of the septic water. That's when you have some people that they're spilling so much sugar that ants actually goes into the septic water that is in the toilet and began eating the sugar out of your toilet bowl. Am I making sense, dear saints? Okay? In saying that, you run into a little problem with diabetics, and here's the problem you run into with diabetics. If the person is also an elderly, let's say, make it worse, they're bedridden, and they're spilling sugar, and the people who are dealing with them are not fast enough in terms of cleaning these individuals, ants can literally go into the bed and eat these elderly alive. Okay? So, saints, one of the things that you got to make sure that you're doing is that you got to make sure if someone is an elderly and they're living with you and they're in the Caribbean or a region where the climate is warmer, or if it's in areas where the climate may not be as warm, but it's summertime where you may get that warm type of climate, know that the ants have the ability to come into your home and affect those individuals during that time. We're going to go ahead and pause right here. I'm not going to push it any further. And Brother Farley, were there anything you want to say at this point, or you're going to wait until we bring the next lecture back? Brother Farley? Okay. I don't hear Brother Farley. Oh, I can hear you loud and clear now, Brother Farley.
Hi. Good evening, saints. We want to give God the thanks and the glory this evening for such precious, precious, precious truths to God's children. James, I'm telling you, this is also one of my favorite subjects, because let me tell you something. I know firsthand what this thing called diabetes can do. A number of years ago, I didn't even know what was taking place. But I just to bring the story a little closer to home, I had worked one day for quite a long time. I didn't have a chance to have a meal, and because I wanted to impress the client with the job that I had finished. But while driving late at night, I decided that, it was just about a quarter to midnight. And I was so hungry that I stopped and I purchased something to eat. Now, I ate the item at around 12 o'clock, midnight, and I drove all the way home. The next day, I felt as sick as a dog, but I was passing through and in the city, and I felt so very bad. I wanted some water, so I decided to stop and get the water. But on my way to the cooler, there was some demonstrations for diabetes machines. And so one of the ladies stopped me and asked me if I'd be willing to take a test. And she checked my blood sugar with the machine. And let me tell you something. She said, "What, 12.6? Do you know that you are diabetic?" I said, "Oh, no. I can't be a diabetic. No. Ain't no diabetic, But she said, "You really should think about purchasing one of these machines so you can test yourself tomorrow and know for sure." I said, "Okay, it's just $65, so I will purchase it." And let me tell you, Saints, the next day when I did the test, my numbers were 23.5 on the diabetes scale. James, those numbers are quite high. So let us go ahead and convert those numbers. 23.5 multiplied by 18, that's 423 on the US scale. So let me tell you something. Those numbers are high on the US scale. Very, very, very dangerous levels. Let me tell you something, my dear folk. That brought a scare to me. So I decided I would go to the doctor to find out what was going on. And I tried to put me on metformin, and by this time I had gotten some information, to know about metformin. I said, no, find something better, for me, not that metformin. So he found a different one, a glyburide, and I was praying about this situation, and right about that time, my wife came across some fantastic information being broadcast on the air by one of our missionaries who has, was teaching the program at that time. And let me tell you something. We tried what was taking place, and by God's grace, let me tell you something. Those numbers came down. We started walking. I couldn't even walk 1 kilometer on the first day, but by God's grace, I asked him, Lord, if you would just give me another street light. I prayed every day, because it was a really tough time to be able to walk those distances. But I prayed and I asked the Lord, if you would just give me another street light, another telephone or light pole, that another small goal, set the small goals. If you would just give me that light, Lord, every day, I will continue to walk and give me the strength. And by God's grace, I was doing 45 minutes to an hour walking per day after 2 weeks. And let me tell you something, my dear friends. Walking. Constance on Health, page 200 says that walking is the best form of exercise. But we didn't only do walking, but we made other lifestyle changes. As you would see coming up in the presentation, there will be some other lifestyle changes that you will need to make in order to receive the blessing. But let me get to the point. When the blessing came about, remember, share everything with your medical practitioner. Why? Because if you don't tell your medical practitioner what you are doing, and most medical practitioners are reasonable if you share what you are doing with them. If you don't tell them what is going on, then when the blessing comes, the medical practitioner will take the glory for the drugs. So because I was sharing with the medical practitioner, when the blessing came on that day, he said, you know what? When he checked the numbers and saw that the numbers were consistently between 5.1 and 5.5, that day he said, congratulations, Mr. Farley. In the 19 years that I've been a medical practitioner, I've never seen type 2 diabetes reversed. And it's from this same program, this same type of program, that the blessing came. So my dear friends, I want to let you know that this information is sound, cutting edge information from God. But this information that is coming to you, you are getting the best type of information to help you with this condition. And all we ask is that you be faithful to the plan. Be faithful to the plan. Pray to the Lord and ask the Lord to bless, and be faithful to the plan, and sit back, my dear friends, and watch the glory of God. My dear friends, I want to let you know that we are so excited to be partnering with you on these nights, to share these programs, my dear friends. And let me tell you something, we're not even halfway there yet. We have some more wonderful, wonderful blessings to tell you about. And the stories are even going to get sweeter and sweeter and sweeter. As they say in Barbados, the story is going to get sweet for days, my dear friends. You stay back and watch the glory of God. James, I want to pass it back over to you.
Okay, thank you, Brother Farley. And Brother Farley, there is something that I want to also make sure that we share.
Mm-hmm.
I want you, Brother Farley, to come back when we come back again. The next night we come, we'll announce the next night we're coming back. And I want to complete, and then I want you to come back in and do a technical part to it, because I know that since you've had to deal with it, you have since gone out and studied this thing so deep that you'll come back and even tie in some technical aspect of this diabetes. So we'll do a real deep, a real in-depth series on diabetes, and then we're going to come back. We're going to deal with the menu. We'll tell people what to eat, when to eat, how to eat, and so forth. So think of, when we're in Canada, you did like a real technical part. So and you can even make it even more technical, so in that way that individuals can see the link from a technical/scientific standpoint, and they can rest assured that which they're actually hearing, they're standing on solid ground and need not to worry or need not to go to unfamiliar places for healing, because God has given his people a message of health, healing, and restoration for these last days. What do you say, Brother Farley?
That is absolutely fantastic.
Amen. Sister Nash, are you there? Sister Nash, I realize you don't have your mic on tonight, so I see you're quiet. Okay.
I'm here.
Yes, Sister Nash. Any feedback pointers you have? Because I didn't want to close out the recording without you and Brother Farley coming in here, but I would love for us to do a more real technical aspect, do real technical menu, detailed menu, and we break this thing down. So we're not just going to just give them a little basic lecture. We want to do an in-depth lecture. Talk to me, Sister Nash.
Okay, good. I just want to remind individuals or caution them that for those who are diabetic, we do not recommend that you just jump off your medication on your own without first consulting with your physician.
Correct.
And we stress on that seriously, as Brother Farley mentioned, that you do go to your physician, you check and share with him what we have shared with you, the recommendations, and then you work along with your physician.
Sister Nash, you mean share with him or her, right?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
And as they see the numbers coming down and stabilizing in the normal range, at that time, your physician will make the recommendations. And that's why it's important for you to have a machine and test your blood level, sugar levels, both morning and at night. When you wake up first thing in the morning and last thing before you go to bed at night, you do check that and record it. So that you have something to share with the physician. And so as you work along with them, and they will put you on the meds. So they're the ones to take you off it, not us. And we wouldn't suggest that you just jump off it just like that. Okay?
Okay, amen. But now, Saints, I want to share something. Even though we don't take people off meds, if it's a life and death situation, we will definitely give you advice. You know what I mean? I'm not going to sit back ignorant and let someone kill themselves if I see a life and death situation. But I can definitely tell you this. We do not touch medication. We recommend that you go back to your physician who put you on it, let the physician know the changes that you have made, and kind of let them know you'd want to partner with them. So you'll keep them abreast in terms of what you're doing. I'll tell you another story as I close here and we go to Q&A. I remember a young lady came to me, put her on the program. She lost 95 pounds, either 95 or 100 pounds in 6 months. 7 months. Okay? And after she finished, she reversed the diabetes, reversed her high blood pressure, reversed her heart disease, completely. Everything was gone. And after that, her physician began calling her in on a regular basis. Like every month, he would just call her and sat her down, speak with her for about an hour, kind of just find out what she's doing, what's new, checking her numbers and everything. And finally, she like, Doc, is there any reason why you call me so often? He says, yes. My wife has the same problem that you had. And I kind of just want to see what you are doing that I can put her on the same program. And also to ask you, if the next time that man comes back to town, tell him that I want to see him. And that man was me that the physician was asking about. So, Saints, I want to tell you that the program that we have by God's grace is by far the most advanced, it's cutting-edge information. And if you take your time and follow it, you sit back and watch the glory of God. I'm going to go ahead and close off the recording here, and we're going to open it up for Q&A. And we are going to keep on lecturing. We're not going to rush the lecture. We're going to take our time and do a thorough, in-depth look at this diabetes thing.